How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Jose, aka TheNYCGeek, aka TNG, aka your Elden Lord. A very joyous Elden Lord as I'm continuing the steps of getting out of this state. Woohoo! Cannot wait. Aka the one who will sit the throne today, aka the guy who wants to share something with you. Okay, I want to talk about something, but I want to share something at the beginning. Some people say, Jose, you hate everything. You hate everything. And they're not wrong. There's a lot of things I do hate, but there's some things I love. There's a lot of things I love. I love coffee. I love chocolate milk. It's gonna mess my stomach up, but I love chocolate milk. And I absolutely love, I derive probably the most pleasure out of watching these parasites get their comeuppance. There are few things in life that give me so much pleasure as that. Watching these bloated, self-righteous, hypocritical companies, watching their attempts to invade our beloved properties and watching them fail. And of course, there is no greater example of this than Rings of Power. And I do want to highlight when I say ours, okay? They are our properties. They are our properties. For a long time, these companies didn't give two shits about Rings of, Lord of the Rings, Halo, Marvel Comics, all these Star Wars. They only gave a damn about them because we took the time to foster, to cultivate, to love those properties, to make the fandoms what they are, to grow them. And that is why when they started seeing that, they're like, oh shit, there's a fandom here. Let's tap into that money. They only see dollar signs, right? And Rings of Power was their greatest folly because Bezos truly saw that property and thought to himself, man, I can invest $1 billion into this and come out of it with I'm gonna have my own Game of Thrones, which is so fitting that his competition was a Game of Thrones spinoff that just destroyed Rings of Power. Obviously, I'm talking about House of the Dragon. And it's just, and I tell people, they talk about that $1 billion. Oh, it's Amazon. Dude, I don't give a damn what company you are. $1 billion is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Okay. It's not only a lot of money, but especially Amazon isn't like, it's not just this, one amorphous, it's not just like this one all encompassing, there's little parts of it, right? Amazon Studios and Twitch and all these other things that they have. And you can't just have your Amazon Studio fail $1 billion project. And let's face it, Rings of Power was a colossal failure. And that's one of the things that's actually what I want to highlight tonight, rather. I'm going to be talking about some of these articles that have started to come out. Some of these shills, these shill media sites that were praising the living shit out of Rings of Power. They were talking about how amazing it is and how the fans are toxic and we're the problem. Not this multi-billion-dollar company spreading its tentacles into a beloved property such as Tolkien's works and ripping it apart and putting up this mockery. That they're not the problem. We're the problem because we actually know what fucking, what lore and canon and how this shouldn't be. But somehow we were the problem. Clearly, your shit show was. But I love seeing these media show sites collapse. Not only collapse, but begin to become the crows, the vultures that they are. It's like the parasites upon parasites, right? You've got Amazon here trying to this is Tolkien's works, okay? This Tolkien's works, and you got Amazon little tentacles coming in, like, fuck, the fans, we're fighting back. The fans are fighting back, and now you have these vultures, which are the media sites, being like, yeah, we're on your side. Yeah, no, we knew it was garbage all along. No, you didn't. You were out there dick riding the hell out of this show until you saw how bad it was, and I guess maybe the Amazon checks ran out, and now you want to join in on it. So, but I want to touch, and this is one article I want to briefly, and I think I might have mentioned it before, how you go back and you look at Eric Kane's works. Oops, I clicked on his thing by accident. I didn't mean to click on his profile. But you look at Eric Kane's works, and he started with talking about how, let me just restart. He was like, the first episode was fine and that he was willing to give it a chance and all this jazz. He was willing to give it a chance. And then he as the episodes kept going by, you can see, you could go back, look at his episode 1, look at his episode 2, look at his episode 8, how he slams the show. And then he did this little synopsis of it all. This came out last month. This isn't what I really want to focus on, but I want to talk about how I want to briefly touch on this article, because he does write a very, very detailed article. Like, this is, whoo, you know, he really went in on this, right? And the title says it all. The Rings of Power Season 1 review, Amazon's arrogant betrayal of the Lord of the Rings, okay? And he talks about how this 8-episode, 8-hour, reportedly $1 billion run has come and gone. And again, everybody's asking, where is this $1 billion? Where did this go? Because they didn't go clearly into the writing. It didn't go into the costumes. It didn't go into the actors, because there's very few big name actors, right? So where did the money go? And he talks about how so you can start seeing where he's already starting to stab at it, saying, then again, perhaps it's all for the best that the Silmarillion remains outside the grasp of these creative butchers. Now, that's not my words. I mean, I've said it before. Many of us have said that you know, Payne and McKay they butchered this. They are, as my buddy, the Renaissance nerd, calls them, you know, they are the JJ, the reboot apostles, you know, because they're followers of JJ Abrams. They're buddies of his. But you know, we call them that, but it's great to see that these crows, that these shill sites are starting to come in and say the same thing, calling them butchers. Far from sticking to the stories and themes of Middle Earth, the showrunners created their own story entirely, abandoning Tolkien's lore and making wild, reckless changes to the legendarium in the process. Perhaps worse, Amazon's adaptation is badly made TV with nonsensical story built on wild coincidences at 100%. We talked about the fact that Galadriel jumps off the ship and she just so happens to find Halbrand's raft in the middle of nowhere, and then the sea monster attacks it, and they just so happen to be saved by Elendil. It's just wild coincidences, and as the article continues, contrived plot lines and a blatant disregard for the various building blocks that make any story complete. Logical character choices, a sense of time and place. Absolutely, we know that this show could not grasp time and place. The fact that they are sailing the ocean in like the span of a day, and I'd like to point out, sailing the ocean in the span of a day. I'm talking about the cavalry episode, the big battle episode, episode 6 for Rings of Power, where not only did the ships of Numenor sail across the ocean to Middle Earth, they went up the river, they went through the Southlands, they found the exact village that was being attacked by Adar. There are tons of other villages and towns, but they knew the exact one. Mind you, they are working on what Halbrand said was several months old information. But there is no sense of time and place here. And narrative, I'm going back to the article, logical character choices, a sense of time and place, and narrative tension, not to mention an overly cast of mostly forgettable and uncharismatic characters. Some wholly made up for the show, and others changed entirely as to be almost unrecognizable. Like Galadriel, like your key character here. In every way that truly matters, The Rings of Power fails, from the writing to the acting to the presentation. It fails as an adaptation, neither enriching Tolkien's work nor remaining true to it. It fails as a good fantasy, gives us generic tropes and melodrama rather than blazing new ground. And it fails as a compelling story filled with cheap mystery boxes and unsurprising twists. So how bad has this show dropped the proverbial Palantir? Now, you know, Eric King goes, and I do recommend you guys go to Forbes, read this article, because I don't want to sit on all this. He writes a very, very detailed article about how much of a failure. And I just want to highlight, you know, this again, Rings of Power fails is good fantasy and good storytelling. Because I want to touch on other articles, because for a long time, and like I said, $1 billion is not a small thing. It doesn't matter if it's Amazon. It doesn't matter. This property needed to be a massive success. Okay. Jeremy, I'm thinking of the quartering. Gary from Nerdrotic has said before that he has had insiders tell him that this show could not be a failure. Like Amazon would never let this show be a failure. Meaning that even if it did fail, they would do everything that they could, everything underhanded to try to alter that. They would try their best to, whether they had to spin the numbers, delete reviews, do whatever they could, pay bots for review bombing. They would use every underhanded technique to make sure that this would not be a colossal failure. Unfortunately for them, their bag of tricks couldn't work. It couldn't work. It didn't work because out of all of the properties that these mega companies, Disney and Paramount and all these other, people, all these companies, rather, I should say, not people, all these parasites, they've invaded properties. But out of all of them, and they're not that to say that fans of those properties have rolled over. They haven't. Let me amend, because I want to say, but out of all of them, the most fiercest resistance has been from the Tolkien fans, the Lord of the Rings fans. Their resistance to Rings of Power is unlike anything we've seen. Yes, we have seen fans from Star Wars, absolutely, fans from Marvel, fans from Wheel of Time, other fans, fans from Halo. There are fans who have said, no, we don't want this. They've rejected it. And that's why these properties, like the MCU is failing, Star Wars is failing, all these things, like even Andor, which I have gone on record to say, I don't think it's terrible. I think at times it's good. Can it be a little bit boring? Yeah, it could be a little too slow. But even Andor, which is probably the best thing that Disney Star Wars has put out recently, is only meeting with apathy. It's just nobody cares because the fans, the real fans, are starting to fight back. But never did we get to see such a bold resistance to this as the Tolkien fans, and that's because clearly Tolkien is such an older, the Tolkien's works, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, the Silmarillion, all these things, they are etched into our minds. It's just etched into our pop culture. It's been almost 100 years, since this is the granddaddy of epic fantasy. And you think that you're going to come in and be able to, take chip at it the way you did with Disney and all those others. And the thing with Disney, I want to say, I'm sorry, though I want to voice crack. I'm going through puberty there. I want to say that even with with Star Wars and with Marvel, it's not like they came in and immediately did their stuff. They started slowly chipping away. They put out some good properties, and then they started slowly turning it into the shit show that it is. Rings of Power, they tried to just turning it into the shit show that it is immediately. And that's another reason why there was such a great backlash. And going back to what I was saying is that they tried everything they could to make this into a success, try to spin the story that it's a success. And you've got, this is coming from one of the biggest shill sites, and that's fucking Variety. And these are the articles I want to really focus on. This came out November 4th. Amazon's silence on the Rings of Power's audience size is deafening. And it is. The Lord of the Rings of Power is in theory among Amazon Prime Video's most, and you see that even now they're trying to say, look how they put that. Hold on. Let me read that again. The Lord of the Rings of Power is, this is important, in theory, they're not putting right there. They could have originally, if this was a few weeks back when Rings of Power was airing and shit, they wouldn't have put that in theory part there. But now the money's over, the show money's over, and these people will turn on the hand that feeds them because they need the clicks. They want the clicks. So they put is in theory among Amazon Prime Video's most watched original series ever. So why is the tech giant being so cagey about its viewership? Dude, they are from the very first paragraph, they're saying everything I just said. They're saying how sneaky they're being, how shady Amazon has been, and it's continuing to be about their viewership, okay? We're going to continue. In the course of the fantasy series' entire 6-week run, In the course of the yes, I'm sorry, because I forgot. The first 2 episodes were out. So in the course of the fantasy series' entire 6-week run, Amazon released just one figure quantifying its performance, claiming the first 2 episodes were streamed by 25 million global viewers in their first 24 hours of availability. And in the 3 weeks since the first season finale, everybody, I want you guys to pay attention to it. Listen, in the 3 weeks since the first season finale, the company has been just as quiet, with only a line in its Q3 earnings report noting the Rings of Power is closing in on 100 million viewers today. A vague figure previously revealed by Amazon Studios chief Jennifer Salke in an interview with Variety. Okay. We're going to go back to the article, but it's very clear what it is. If this was the resounding success that Amazon would like for it to be, that they would like to paint it to be, they would be singing this thing from the rooftops. They would be shouting it from the rooftops. Oh, look at this. Look at our numbers. Boom, 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 boom. When you have failures, you don't want to bring attention to them, right? And that's what they're doing. They are so hurt from this. This wasn't just a flop. This was a disaster. This was a disaster that Amazon right now is in pure damage control on how the hell are they going to fix this. There are rumors, and again, I just want to say they're rumors, but there are rumors that they're not firing McKay and Patrick. I got to think of another name for these two because I don't care. I don't care to remember their names. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve to have their Elden Lord remember their names. So I got to think of it. I know we have Dumb and Dumber for David and Dan Benioff. So we have to think of a name for these two morons. But right now, there's rumors that they're going to be shifted to the side and they might get other showrunners. They might scrap several storylines that were worked on, which, okay, look, you can't just scrap stuff either, Amazon, right? Like you can't just go, we're going to cut this because it's going to make even less narrative sense, right? At this point, if you're really going to scrap it, just make the whole thing a fucking fever dream and start all over. At this point, you might as well, right? What are you going to lose? What can you lose? Because you've already hit rock bottom. You might as well just go with that. But let me go back into this. Like I said, Amazon is in absolute disaster mode. And it just goes to show because they're not talking about this. This show just ended a few weeks ago. And they haven't mentioned jack shit about this show because they don't have a bloody eye, a bloody nose or a black eye. They are just beaten down and being carried on a gurney out back, and they just don't want to talk about it. Now, the article continues with, true, Amazon has never exactly been forthcoming with streaming data. We still don't even know an exact subscriber total for Prime Video, but in the case of Rings, a series representing the company's biggest investment in scripted content to date, the first season alone cost about $465 million to produce. And again, where did this money go? We know that 250 was for the estate, right? To buy the rights to it. 465 million to produce. Where did the other 250 go? Marketing? I would not doubt it. But where did this $500 million go? And again, this show is so cheap looking. It's so cheap looking. And tasked with becoming Prime Video's best performing title of all time, Amazon's silence is deafening. It's especially deafening when compared with the company's repeated viewership disclosures for Thursday Night Football. The NFL broadcasts, Amazon paid even more than the astronomical Rings budget to acquire. Though Prime Video struck a deal with TV ratings giant Nielsen to measure viewership for TNF, Amazon has disputed Nielsen figures for each week for the broadcast, claiming, for instance, that 8.9 people watched the October 20 game. Yeah. Nielsen has, they're talking about the football stuff. But they're saying, I get what they're saying here. Clearly, Amazon has no problem releasing viewership numbers when it so desires. Nielsen has also measured viewership for the Rings of Power as part of its weekly streaming ratings. So there are multiple asterisks attached to those numbers, and it is what others have said from the get-go. Even from the first episode, when they're like 25 million people sampled the first episode. Nielsen counts only viewership from US TV connected shows. So mobile laptop, for instance, are excluded. Streaming viewership is also measured in minutes streamed rather than a concrete number of viewers. Still, Rings has performed very well by Nielsen metrics, delivering some of the biggest weekly viewer memberships ever for a Prime Video series, so it has not reached the peaks of Reacher and The Terminal list. Those series, however, were released binge style, with their entire first seasons dropping at once. And I've been saying this for a long time. Streaming companies have got to get off of the binge model. Just go with the weekly sub. Look how well it worked out for House of the Dragon. Anyway, I want to go to here. But a pattern has also emerged in the Rings week-to-week viewership that may help to explain Amazon's silence. Until the most recent period measured, the series minutes streamed decayed each week, albeit by only 1% over the previous 3 weeks measured. And this, even still, like, Variety is still trying to kind of play some kind of damage control to them, but it just goes to show the pattern suggests that Rings audiences shrank as the season went on. And I'm going to skip to here. It is a noticeable contrast to the other blockbuster fantasy, House of the Dragon, which has often been pitted against Rings in the press. It is to be pitted against them. They are both weekly shows. They're both epic fantasy series. Yes, they are to be pitted against each other. The Game of Thrones prequel spinoff grew its weekly viewership substantially early on before plateauing around the same level of viewing time. Dude, I don't want time. I want to know how many people watched it. Okay? And yes, of course, viewing time alone does not tell the whole story. Look, if Amazon, it's simply impossible to know how the Rings of Power stacks up against those figures. Are those nearly 100 million viewers cumulative across all episodes? Is each episode averaging close to 100? Like, it's hard to tell because Amazon's never, and I'm going to tell you right now, Amazon is never, ever, ever, to quote Chris Jericho, going to tell us the true numbers. They're not. And I just look at how the shilling continues, right? And how it switches almost in the span of a few days. Here we go. Look at this title from CBR. Was the Rings of Power that bad? Because the numbers paint a different picture. At first, it looked like no one liked The Lord of the Rings of Power. But recent numbers have shown that that's not true. Fuck you talking about? Nobody liked this fucking show. But then if you go to that article was written 4 days ago, right? And then I go to this, this next article was published 2 days ago. Lord of the Rings audience power shrank every week. So which is it? Is it that the people liked it, or is it that their audience shrank every week? Which one is it, CBR? Because apparently you guys can't even decide for yourselves. I keep freaking expanding over here when I mean to expand over on my right screen. But they can't even decide for themselves. We'll go to the first article. Let me look at the first article, okay? Let me just leave it like this for a little bit so that I can show you. See? 4 days ago, was the Rings of Power that bad? 2 days ago. The Rings of Power's audience shrank every week. The first article, there was legit for many fans. No, there wasn't. Stop lying to yourself, CBR. For few shills. Outside of Twitter, I have not seen people hyping this show. And the Twitter people are, listen, you guys know what my thoughts are on Twitter. There was legitimate hype going into Rings of Power. As the first Lord of the Rings content to come out since Peter Jackson's trilogies, they were excited to see what the Amazon series would offer. After all, as the most expensive television show of all time, it was bound to be good. Anyone who equates money spent into quality, you're fucking dope. You gotta reevaluate your life, because there have been a lot of things that have had a lot of money behind them and have been awful. However, that wasn't everyone's attitude. A portion of the fan base, I would say the majority. You're saying many fans here, I would say very few fans. And I would say 90-something% of the actual fans out there, the ones who didn't sell out their integrity, approached the Rings of Power with nothing but skepticism. Some of us approached it with more than that. But if you want to say skepticism at its mildest, sure. Most of the skeptical fans were upset that the series was reportedly playing fast and loose with some of Tolkien's lore. And I have said this constantly, and others have said this too, and said it far more eloquently than I do. Lore and canon matter. Okay, it is crucial to any work out there, anything. If and it's not just for books or any of that stuff, right? If you establish that the Master Chief, let's go with Halo. I just gonna go with Halo. If you, off the top of my head, I'm making this example, but let's say you establish that the Master Chief can run 50 miles an hour. Okay, let's say you can run 50 miles an hour, and you stick with that, right? You stick with that. You can run 50 miles an hour. When something when a car passes by him, let's say the car is going at 40 miles an hour, if he catches up to it, it makes sense because you've established in the canon that, yo, he's faster than that. He can go faster than that. So when something goes 100 miles and he can't catch up, it makes sense, right? If you establish that Gandalf needs, I'm not saying that he does, I'm just saying, if you say that Gandalf needs a staff to cast his spells, and you establish that in the lore, and he all of a sudden doesn't start using that staff to cast his spells, people are going to be like, that doesn't make sense with the character. I just pulled that staff. I'm just using that as an example. But people will say that doesn't make sense. You have to stick with canon and lore. If you don't establish stuff as your foundation for anything that you're writing, anything, then when you pull shit out your ass, people are gonna be like, what the fuck is this? What the hell's going on? I'll give you a shit. I don't have anything here. I was gonna look for something Naruto based. I'll use Naruto for example. Dude, Naruto is an anime that, dude, I used to love that show when it first came out. The first half of Naruto, I was a huge fan. Me and my wife met through that show. We were cosplaying it together. I remember when Naruto first came out, when kunais, the daggers that they throw, when kunais and being able just to summon a fireball, like a fire jutsu, you were like, whoa, you could do some, you were considered like, oh shit. Especially if you were a student, you were considered elite. And then, you would have things like, oh, this person has, they could cast illusions and stuff. It was like grounded. It was grounded. And then all of a sudden in the second half, they just started doing stuff like, this person can summon meteors. This person's an alien from space who grew a world tree that's eating everybody and turning them. You're like, what the fuck is happening? None of this makes sense in the canon. And that's why it is so important. That's why so many fans were mad when Rings of Power took Tolkien's canon and went all over the fucking place. And here, CBR, while those fans' complaints were justified on some fronts, their initial skepticism hindered their ability to enjoy the Rings of Power at all. Yes, because we don't want fan fiction. We want established lore to be treated and respected. It's why I always say, with the same fucking mentality that they're like here with, Tolkien did. I'm talking about the two showrunners when they were like, well, Tolkien didn't explicitly say anything against this. It's like, dude, stop trying to circumvent canon by saying he didn't write this. No, stick with what he did write. That's the point of canon. He did write this, because with that same stupid logic, I could be like, well, if I make a movie with Harry Potter is a pimp and Voldemort is a rival pimp, and the two of them hate each other because they're rival pimps, you'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about, Jose? And I'll be like, well, J.K. Rowling never wrote that they weren't pimps. She never wrote that. That's why you stick with what was written instead of trying to fill in holes. Don't try to fill in holes. Work with what's written. And that's why some reviews for the Rings of Power weren't very good. The thing is, recent numbers have shown that a lot of the negative press was put out by a small vocal group of narrow-minded fans. It was not. It was not. It was. It wasn't a small. Numbers prove that fans did like the Rings of Power, dude. They have. I mean, for fuck's sake, Amazon was clearly deleting reviews, putting a review embargo, shitting on, they own like IMDb or one of those sites, and altering the reviews there. Like CBR, you are such a garbage site. You're such a garbage site. And then 2 days after, just 2 days after, a new report suggests that viewership from Amazon Prime videos steadily declined with each new episode because people tuned out, man. Even the normies were like, yo, this show sucks. Even the normies, and I hate saying it like, because some people might think like, oh, when you say normie, I don't mean that like in an insulting manner, right? Like, when I call you a consumer and a shill, then I mean as an insulting manner. But normies, listen, not everybody's gonna be a big massive fan. My mom and dad are normies when it comes to Lord of the Rings, right? They saw the trilogy with me. They had never read the books like I did. So when the Fellowship of the Ring came out, they were like, oh, we have no idea what this is. But I was like, I want to take them with me to come see it. And they were normies. They had no idea what the hell this is. They don't read fantasy. They don't do that. They came and they watched, and especially my mom. My mom dug it. She loved Sam. She loved Aragorn. She remembered their names. She was a normie. She's a normie, but she still could enjoy it. And then when the second movie came and we all came to see it and we all went to watch it together, she remembered characters. She's like, that's Pippin. That's Merry. She doesn't know the dwarf. She doesn't know Legolas. She goes, El Duende y el Enano, which is, the dwarf, the elf and dwarf in Spanish. Duende is elf. Enano is dwarf. She'd be like, she remembered them like that, but she remembered that's Aragorn. She didn't, she's like, that's Frodo, that's Sam, that's Gandalf. She remembered their names. Even as a normie, she was still enjoying it. So you can be a normie and still, appreciate good stuff. I just mean when I say you're a normie, you probably have no prior experience with these type of works. And, the normies, even the normies who don't have the attachment that myself and others do to the established lore and canon, to Tolkien's works, even they were tuning out. They were tuning out because it just was not that to say that it wasn't interesting is putting it mildly. The show seemed to also have its largest drop after its first 2 weeks, which showed a decline of about 20%. Yes, those first 2 episodes were horrible. The whole show, oh my God. And that Mystifying Mystics, again, they're talking about, Nielsen's metrics. And this, you notice that this is a very, look, let me see if I can show you this. Hold on, wait. You notice this is a very, did I close it? Wait, reopen last, close tab. Here we go. Like this one, they put some numbers, they give you some graphs. They're like, get some graphs, man. Look at these graphs, right? They, CBR, I think CBR realized how still trying to defend this show is not a good look. So they're like, oh, a new report showed this. And look at they touch on this very briefly, the mystifying metrics of Nielsen. And then here we go. The Rings of Power's big season 2 plans. The only plans for this show that will save this show, and I really don't think there is a saving. But the only thing that might start turning people back towards it is truly rebooting the entire thing. Scrap season 1. Scrap it entirely. Co-showrunner Patrick McKay said that the new season will be bigger and better on every level by an order of magnitude. Part of this may have to do with the fact that he and co-runner took audience criticisms from season 1 into consideration. The cake was kind of baked before the audience response came in. Certainly you look at audience response and you can see what characters people love and what kind of storytellings moved them. And explain it, he aren't overcorrecting for any of it. That while they're not overcorrecting for any of it, they are listening to people's responses. Dude, that is the most spin bullshit way of saying, yeah, we heard you guys hate the show, but we don't care. We don't care. We heard you. We heard that you think the show sucks. We heard that. We know. We heard that. But we're not going to fix that. We don't care. Like, they're not going to change the core stuff. Galadriel was terrible. Halbrand was terrible. Sauron. Gil-galad. Elrond. Celebrimbor. Oh, by the way, I didn't even know his actor was in Downton Abbey. I'm watching Downton Abbey now. You've got, the bootleg Frodo, bootleg Gandalf, the bootleg Nazgûls. Just everything was terrible about this show. There was not the only small thing that people like myself could have slightly enjoyed was we like Durin and Disa, and they were such a tiny part of the story, and even still, they were attached to the shitty Mithril story, which is horrendous, you know. So like, if you took them away from that, then maybe we might be like, okay, yeah, well, can we get a little bit more Durin and Disa? But nothing else. We don't want nobody else in the show. So you got to make a fucking 8-episode series about just Durin and Disa. There are way too many things wrong with this show for them to fix it. Season 2 is going to continue to be a disaster. And what's worse, season 1 had a lot of people who hate watched it, and normies like myself who hate watched it, and normies who they tuned in just out of curiosity. Season 2 will lose a lot of people, a lot of those normies who are just gonna be like, yeah, I remember that show sucked, or I heard a lot of bad things about that show. And there are people who are not gonna hate watch it. There are gonna be people who will be like, dude, 8 hours of my life, I could watch something else. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. So I don't know, but as I started with this show, as I started with this video, there are things I love. And one of the things I love the most is watching these companies fail. I love it. I love it. And people might be like, Jose, that's messed up. How could you want for people to fail? They might lose their jobs. Good. Where is this mentality that there shouldn't be cause and effect? You put out garbage. You should not continue to be in a spot to put out garbage. I don't understand that. If I fucked up in my job and people are like, oh, you should keep doing your job poorly. No, there should be repercussions. And it should be repercussions for these 2 show writers and anyone else who was involved in this project. You should not be anywhere where you are able to work on something creative. Go do something else in life. There's a lot of other jobs that need to be done out there in the world. Don't write, don't create, don't make costumes, because all of it sucked with this show. And I'm glad to see if they come out tomorrow and say that these two, especially these two, JD Payne and Patrick McKay, if I got to think of something, PP, Patrick and Payne, PP, big PP, small PP. That's what maybe I might call them, small PPs. If those two were fired tomorrow, I would celebrate it. I would be posting right on my Twitter, because I don't want people who clearly are talentless hacks who want to infect beloved properties that I love, that millions of others love, that billions of others love. I don't want to see talentless hacks like that in anywhere where they can continue to try to besmirch and tarnish the legacy of those properties I love. I don't feel bad about that at all. I don't. So anyway, this has been the NYC Geek. If you enjoyed this content, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Hit it right now. And also while you're at it, please consider hitting that like, that share button, that freaking bell so you can know when another video goes live. Leave a comment down below. I do my absolute best to engage and chat with every single one of you. I've been busy this past week. We're doing some house showings, yard sales, packing stuff. It's been busy, but I want to get back into the swing of it, especially with the weekend. This is going to be a nice week because I got 2 holidays off. So, and if you haven't already, please make sure to follow me over on twitch.tv/TheNYCGeek, where I do stream regularly. I've been streaming now on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Trying to get back into streaming there and keeping back to this, especially once we move. Oh, I can't wait to get out. Once we move, it'll be a lot easier. I'll have a set schedule in place, as well as follow me on that cesspool. It's not filthy anymore. I won't call it a filthy cesspool. It's still a cesspool. You know, they're trying. Space Daddy is trying, but it's still discussing over on Twitter. So follow me over there. And remember, and actually check out the Discord. I believe I have a link to the Discord. That's the best place to keep appraised to the notifications. And remember always, your time is precious. I thank you for sharing it with me. I thank you for not sharing it with Rings of Power. Stay safe. Take care of each other. And I will see you guys next time. This chocolate milk is going to mess me up. I'll see you guys next time.